Hi, everyone. Rich Berliner here from Charged Up, and I am today very honored to be with Frank O'Connor. And Frank is with a company called Accelerate. I'm going to let him introduce himself, talk a little bit about his background, and also about Accelerate. But I'm very honored to have him. We were on a panel together at an event a week or so ago, and I thought his presentation was spot on. And I would love to bring it to the rest of our readers and people who watch Charged Up. And so, Frank, thank you for being here today. Again, I was very impressed with what you had to say. Tell us about you, about Accelerate, what you do, and how you do it.
So, first of all, thank you very much for inviting me to have this conversation and to kind of share some more of our, back and forth, learning and shared experiences in the EV space, right? It's a nascent industry and it's one that continues to go through all kinds of starts and stops, to say the least, right? So, what Accelerate America is all about is really how do we help people install the right chargers at the right time and the right quantity with the right kind of profile, for who they are. And, as I talked to you about when we first met, Rich, my background is in the IT space, and I'm a data geek. That's what I do. So I don't make decisions based on, well, this feels good or that feels good. I make decisions based on what does the data tell me? And in this world, the data is telling me, well, I need four chargers, or I need six, or I need eight, or I don't know what I need. And frankly, that is probably the most single true statement you can have. Most people, when they say, I want to install chargers, I have a village out on Long Island I just want to bid for. They wanted to do 8 DC fast chargers of 300 kilowatts or better in a parking lot that has absolutely no chargers in it at all today. Now, 8 DC fast chargers, to get those installed, first of all, you need 2 megawatts or more of power. Second, you need to have more than $1 million to invest to actually put the chargers in the ground and get them all operational. And when you have no history of what the actual demand is, that's a bit of a flyer. My take on something like that would be, let's put in 2 fast chargers, let's put in 2 level 2 chargers, and let's figure out what the demand actually is. Let's put in the conduit, let's put in the transformers that can handle the growth, but not put in the equipment. Let's let the data, the demand, tell us what we need to do. And I think that's the message that I want to carry to virtually all of our clients, right?
Frank, you're
Yours, mine,
being
everyone.
you're being absolutely too logical about all this for an industry for an industry that's not very logical at times. But I agree wholeheartedly with you. That's what's kind of good about being in this state in this industry in this stage is nobody knows what they need or want. And so
Right.
it's up to professionals like you to tell them. And I think that's very noble. And that's I think the challenge out there is, there are companies out there. We had a chuckle about it at the event. There are companies that are pulling out of the market, or there are companies that are running out of money, their stock prices are under $1 and they may not be around. But at the end of the day, they're selling what they have rather than what the
Right.
customer needs. And it sounds like you're like me. I'm an old Dale Carnegie guy. Find out what the customer wants and give it to them is really what
Sure,
it goes down
sure.
to.
And here's, as I said earlier, the problem, the challenge is that in most cases here, we're asking people who have never been in the energy business at all to make decisions about something that they think they want or they know they want, but they don't know how to actually deliver it. That they're going to make decisions where the other little twist is they don't want to pay anything for the service. They want to be able to offer this to their customers, offer this to their constituents, clients, the renters, right? They want to do it at no direct charge to them. They want me to take the flyer on the capital investment, which we are happy to do, and we figured out a way to get that done. But what we need to do is figure out what's the right mix. And they don't know, and we don't know.
Right.
So we've really approached this very simply. put in the minimal amount we can put in, make sure it works. First of all, it needs to be reliable. I mean, this drives me out of my mind, right? I own two EVs and I own an airplane. So I burn lots of fuel in the airplane. I have a lot of batteries in the EVs. My stepson, just this last weekend, borrowed my EV actually 2 days ago to go do something with his fiance. And I thought they were just going to drive, you know, 30, 40, 50 miles in one direction, do what they need to do, and come back. I knew the EV only had 160 miles or so of charge in it when they took it. Well, he didn't just do that. He did the first 40-mile drive, and then he drove another 45 miles, and then he drove another 10 miles. Every one of those miles was going further away from my house. So now he's going to turn around and come back. Well, he's got to come back 90 miles, and he only has 70 miles of range. And with the whole myriad of various applications and software pieces and everything else, when you plug the car in, unless you have the right phone with the right app and the right car in the right place, it doesn't charge.
You know, it's funny
It
because
doesn't work.
I said this at the event, but I come from the cell phone business. And there were years back in the day, of course, but there were years when you couldn't go to another city and have service because the roaming business of this hadn't come to pass yet. So we're actually in touch with an interesting company that I've been talking to. I was on a panel with these people a while back. And EV Passport is the name of the company. The fellow's name is Human. But at the end of the day, you've got to have the application in your phone. If there's no cell service, you can't download it. If there's no cell service, you can't connect to the charger. But people, that is an underappreciated aspect of this business right now. And that roaming piece has to come to pass so you can go anywhere with anything, because there aren't credit card slots on the vast majority of these things. And you're SOL if you have a situation where you get there and there's no connectivity or there's no application in your phone. So the other part of it too is this software and how important to it is. And you brought that up. Talk a little bit to us about how important the software is in this equation and how that fits in.
It's again, like everything else, going back to my geek roots, right? The software is the part that is the touch point for everybody, right? I could have the greatest hardware platform on the planet, and if my software doesn't work well, and your experience with the software is troubled or error prone or incomplete or too difficult to manage, any of the above, then who cares how good the hardware is?
Right.
Right.
And we've all seen that situation where this vehicle with this charger and this power output and this battery should all work. And have you found that for whatever reason, A plus B plus C plus D still doesn't work?
Yeah. Gives you X, right? It's a big stop sign. You get nothing works. Look, as I said, my stepson was doing it the other day, and he kept plugging his car into an Electrify America charger. I mean, it should work. Oh, actually, was it EVgo? No, it was Electrify America. And every time he'd plug it in, it would start charging, and then it would stop, and it wouldn't deliver any power. And he'd get a red thing on the dashboard saying it stopped. There was an error, and no other information. So he called me up, and I said, well, maybe I could start it from my app, remotely. I opened up my EVgo app where I distinctly know I had a $63 balance, should have been more than enough to charge the car, right? And it said, sorry, you're too far away from that charger, you can't enable it. Well, wait a minute. No, that's crazy, right? I mean, this is crazy talk. We should, if my daughter, borrowed my car and it needs to be charged, and I have a regular internal combustion engine car, and she goes to any gas station, puts the hose in the car, fills it up with gas, and moves on, does her thing.
Which is what's holding back the adoption of EVs for especially, think about it, for trucks, buses. I was using the example today. I did a podcast with our friend Jerry Frost, and I said, Jerry, what about the situation where you've got 20 or 30 or 40% failure rate on these chargers, but you got a bus
Right.
company? And that means my kid is going to be standing in the cold and no bus is going to come get him. And that's why giving out electric buses is a wonderful thing, but we must do our jobs and
That's
in
right.
the charging space to make sure that those work reliably all the time, or those buses, those trucks are not going to roll. So I'm with you on that. It's a really interesting time. Again, it reminds me of the cell phone business 30 years ago. This didn't work with
Yeah,
that. You had to burn a NAM in it to make the phone work. It just it smooths out, but it takes time.
I think there was something else that brought up at the meeting we both attended, in the New Jersey Alliance meeting about the use cases, right? And if you have a singular use case, that's actually relatively easy to solve for, right? I'm going to use my uh, municipal garbage trucks on a daily basis to go do their routes and pick up the trash from the various neighborhoods and drop it at the landfill and then park the truck overnight and let it charge. And if you only had that use case, that's pretty
Be fine.
straightforward. You don't
It'd be
need,
the route.
yeah,
The
you
guy
don't,
would do his route, and we're fine.
yeah. Okay. But now I live in Southern California. We don't have this problem where I live anyhow, which is what do you do when it snows? Right?
Yeah,
Now, back east where I grew up on Long Island. Well, guess what? The plows with the very same, municipal garbage trucks, they put a plow on the front of it and they let the guy drive up and down the street and he plowed the street after he was done doing his trash run. Well, now all of a sudden, number one, my drain on the battery is significantly higher
in the
because I'm now
cold.
pushing all that weight of the snow, right? And the second thing is that maybe I just finished my trash pickup run and I got to go right back out with the plow on the front of it, or I'm getting snow at the rate of 4 or 5 inches an hour, and I just did a route. And guess what? When I come back, I got to start at the beginning again and do it again. Well, how do I charge that?
Right.
How do I deal with that problem? And that's a different use case, then the overnight charge level two, not a problem. It's got 8 hours to charge and everything is good. So you've got to figure out what all the variables are. And it really determines what your fueling policy will be.
Well,
And
I'm
that's all
saying
this
this.
is.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to step on you there, but I'm saying this tongue in cheek. I blame you because you live in California and it's your people that are pushing to get the trucks and the buses and, electrify all the vehicles. Yet, oh, it's a hot summer day, so maybe you shouldn't charge today. So, it's that push to get to, zero emissions, but we must let this percolate and this all work together as a system before we can just
Yep.
reach out and do that. So saying that
We
kidding.
have this group here in California called CARB, and it's the California Air Resources Board. These guys are the definition of the land of fruits and nuts, okay? Because we really put all these things in motion out here without really understanding the law of unintended consequences on
Right.
all of these rules that came out. And it's something that you're right, it needs to percolate. We need to have input from groups and areas and use cases that are way outside of what you would just do here in California. We have a fairly benign kind of weather pattern here, right? And it's
Right.
typically warm and typically sunny, and we get rain and whatnot, but we don't get the snow or the nasty winter weather that you get back east, and it's just a completely different use case. So I'm a big believer in understanding what we have to do. I'm also a big believer. I think EVs are going to have their place. By the way, I think hydrogen vehicles are also going to have their place for a lot of the Class A diesels or those other kinds of
We
use
agree.
cases where,
I
you
totally agree
know,
with you. I just want to point out that it's our fruits and nuts here in Jersey that have followed your fruits and nuts. So um, we have
yeah,
the
I know.
snow and we have the weather and we have winter. So, it's one of those things where somebody at the table should be raising their hand going, yeah, but what about when that happens? And everybody goes, oh, yeah, okay, we didn't thought of that. So, when you rush out to do things and then, you let the cow out of the barn, then you lock the door. It's a little bit difficult in that setting, but so many of your thought processes are what I think are the right ones in this situation to help your clients and people who are interested in getting as much charging for their buck and as much of the right way to do these things. I found your discussion of this compelling because, again, not everybody in this business knows what the heck they're talking about.
Yeah, and I'm going to get into this a little bit. This is a little bit of a technical set of details now I'd like to spend a few moments on, which is, we all talk about level 1, level 2, level 3 chargers. Okay, so level 1 chargers, 110, 125 volt, in my personal opinion, pretty close to worthless, right? Because the amount of kilowatt hours you get out of those is going to be, 1 or 2 or 3 kilowatts per hour. And, I have a Rivian, has a 160 kilowatt battery. Well, that means that it's going to take something in the neighborhoods of 80 hours to charge my car if I use that charger alone. No, that makes it worthless. I can't drive the car for 4 days. Enough said, move on. Level 1 chargers really aren't, they're there as a pure emergency, but they really don't even help then. Then you get the level 2. And level 2 chargers can be really good and can be really, really bad. There's a set of charge point chargers out there that are only 32 amp chargers, and they're dual port. So if they're both being used, you're only getting 16 amps out of each port. And 16 amps converts to about, I don't know, 4 kilowatts of power. And again, now my 660 kilowatt battery is going to take 40 hours to charge. So it's only 2 days now. Again, somewhat worthless. And the other problem I have with some of those chargers, it's not just one manufacturer, is that the little clips that go in the last thing, that little clip is what hits the micro switch on the inside of the car to say, I'm plugged in, I'm ready to go. Well, the damn clips break. And then, so that charger is worthless. Right?
So let's get into that part of it. Maintenance. There is
Oh,
no, it seems to me, from my experience so far, there isn't a warehouse anywhere in this country with a bunch of cords laying around or a bunch of boards to replace the communications piece or a bunch of cables if somebody steals the copper. So the solution to that is A, buy reliable. B, we need to set up a real maintenance system, a supply chain system in this country for repairing these things. What's your take on it? How are you dealing with that?
yeah, and that's a great question. I mean, well, look, first of all, I have a very limited number of level 2 chargers that I work with and level 3 chargers. I do that because I don't want to have to inventory 87 different types of products, right? Second, I do a lot of work in the cities. I do a lot of work out here in Las Vegas. I'm doing a bunch of work now. I just picked up some contracts in New York that are going to be next to battery storage systems, and picked up some big contracts in there. We're going to keep spare parts warehoused locally. We also, and this stealing a page from the IT book, our friends at FedEx and UPS will keep inventory at their facilities in either Louisville or in Memphis, where their hubs are.
That's
So
smart.
you can keep inventory there and have it dispatched from that location with a single phone call or something on the computer, and it'll show up within 8 hours because they'll just put it on the next plane that's going to New York or the next plane that's going to Las Vegas and deliver it, and it's on site the next day. At worst case, 24 hours. You've got the replacement part. You can bring the part back in, install it, and keep that operational.
It seems
That's
like your
wonderful.
forte has been thinking of all these different things, but in the event, like a bus company, my kid has to be picked up that morning. So if the driver gets back, the charger doesn't work. Are you figuring in excess capacity so that if a bus wasn't charged, it could be moved to another charger and
Well,
charged?
sure. I mean, look, at the end of the day, for those environments where you're going to have
Life and death.
mission critical types of applications, you have to have more capacity than you need, and not a huge amount more. One or two ports of additional capacity over what you need, so that if something goes wrong with those other two ports, you have a place to go. It's an absolute requirement, right? The other thing that we work with is we've got a series of devices that are portable chargers that can be put on a trailer, that are on a trailer, that are on wheels that you can tow behind.
For
They're
AAA,
towables.
say.
Yeah, yeah, a AAA type, but even better than AAA, like, that are multiple hundreds of watts that I can charge a truck out on the road with,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
that makes
So
sense.
so these are 400 kilowatt DC fast chargers with 4 ports that are on a trailer that I can pull behind its pickup truck. And if I have a vehicle get stranded out there, I can go out, give them a fast charge for 30 minutes, get them a significant charge, and send them on their way to continue what they were doing.
Yeah,
That's an absolute requirement for those critical life safety type environments.
yeah, and that makes perfect sense. And that's where I think this, you've got to be thoughtful about these things, and you've really got to bring that to the customer. When you say, hey, I'm going to really help you to be all encompassing in what you're doing here. And if there's a couple of big gaps like snow plowing or whatever, or ports that are down, Jerry and I were talking earlier today, Jerry Frost, about, well, what happens, the failure rate of these chargers could be, 20 or 30%. So that would mean you need two or three extra chargers. So, it's an evolutionary pattern here. We agree with that.
Well,
And that's
but you
what's
see,
got
the
to
thing
happen.
is that I don't think the chargers that I use, my level 2 chargers that I use, are primarily from a company called Atom Power. They're based in North Carolina. First of all, they're all American made. They're all delivered in America. They're all made in America, and they're all warehoused in America. So I don't have a lot of big, huge supply chain issues that, like we had that short disruption of the supply chain at the ports last week. Even that 3 or 4 days that they were disrupted is going to cause a small ripple effect in the near future. I don't have that problem.
Yeah.
That's number one. Number two, all the intelligence on their chargers is inside of a box that's in a secured facility. They don't have any intelligence out on the bollard, where like a lot of the other ones have an LCD display and everybody has their own LTE communications. All of that is centralized with the Atom Power solution. So that's the second benefit. The third thing is that we have thousands and thousands of ports deployed. And our uptime percentage, our availability percentage, not just uptime, but available. So available end to end, right, is over 99.4%.
So
Okay. That's a huge number.
I take that as gospel from you, with the experience you have. But we just had a hurricane yesterday, and we had a hurricane a couple of weeks ago. So power goes out. What are your thoughts on the overall setup if you have mission critical companies, trucking companies, bus companies? How do you solve that issue for those companies? What's the backup plan when the power goes out, the grid goes down, for that sort of thing in your mind?
So again, now you're having to take and right size the solution for the environment you're in. So if you're truly in a mission critical fire life safety kind of an environment, right? And I would suggest that school buses fit that, right? You can't have school buses breaking down. You can't have them unavailable. It's not workable, right? Um, there are battery storage systems that I can put on site next to the chargers, so that those batteries can get charged overnight from the grid when the grid is available at the lowest possible cost. Or I can augment it with solar, or I can augment it with a hydrogen generator locally. So I have ways that I can do all of that. I think that there's not one solution here, but I think that you should be looking at, do I need solar? Probably. Do I want or need batteries? Again, fire life safety? Probably. do I want or need a hydrogen generator that I can use to actually generate power locally? Depend on the need, but maybe. Now I take all of that and I put it with my grid, and I put it with my building, and I put it with my EV charging infrastructure, and I want to be able to manage all of that. And one of the things that we have is a company called DG Matrix that actually has a power router that simplifies all of those various connections. So I can take in the single device, I can take DC power in from the solar panels, I can take power in from the grid, I can take power in from the generator, and I can put power out to the building, and I can put power out to my EVs. And I can do all of that real time without a whole, building full of additional equipment. The power router that's part of the EV charger does all of that.
So there you go, thinking like an IT guy again, Jer. Right. But yeah, that's exactly the way I think with mission critical situations, people have to think. And so
Yeah.
I don't want to keep you too long. And I think our listeners and the folks that are watching this got a lot out of what you just had to say. And personally, I think you're one of the most direct and straightforward people that I've run into in this business. So I tip my hat to
Thank you.
uh,
Thank you. I tip my hat to you.
we've been talking to Frank O'Connor from Accelerate, and I think everybody should at least explore the philosophy that Frank has been using and talking about here. Frank, I want to thank you for being with us today, and I think what you're doing is God's work here in this end of the business, and I hope you continue to do it. And let's keep in touch. And for anybody who wants to reach you, how can they find you?
So www.accelerate, XLR8, the number 8, America.net. And we can be reached at 888-391-3909. So, and also charge me at accelerateamerica.net.
Gotcha.
So we're happy to help you.